We should have known when they didn't eat the donuts. That should have been the first red flag. But we were tired. We'd been on the road for 8 hours, cramped in the back seat of a decade-old Corolla that smelled like fast food wrappers and melted chapstick. It was me, Jen, and Marcus, driving from Colorado to Vermont for a friend's wedding. None of us wanted to fly. We were broke, had time off, and figured, road trip. Make it a thing. We hit Jamestown sometime after 2 p.m., a no-name town in the middle of nowhere that felt like it had been stuck in the 1970s and gave up trying to catch up. You ever pass through a place that feels like it's mad at you just for being there? Like the town itself is watching? That was Jamestown. No chain stores, no traffic lights. Just a 2-lane road, a broken "Welcome to" sign, and a gas station with one pump and an out-of-order trash bag tied over it. We pulled over to stretch our legs, maybe grab a snack, use a real bathroom instead of some truck stop horror show. That's when they approached us. 3 of them. Early 20s. Clean clothes. The kind of smiles that stay too long. 1 girl, 2 guys. All a little too well put together for a town that looked like it hadn't had new residents since Reagan. "Hey," one of them called out. We paused. "You folks passing through?" Marcus nodded, already halfway back into the car, trying to ignore them. But Jen, always too nice, stepped forward. "Yeah, just stretching out." The girl smiled wide. "We're from the church down the road. Doing hospitality today. You're welcome to come by. Coffee and donuts. No pressure." She said, "No pressure." The same way car salesmen say, "Totally optional." Jen looked at me. I shrugged. We were tired. We hadn't eaten since late morning, and there was something disarming about how calm they were. Jen smiled back. "Sure, we'll stop in." We followed them about 3 blocks down, past a few empty storefronts and an old diner that looked like it hadn't opened since Y2K. The church was a weathered white building with paint peeling around the edges and a steeple that leaned just slightly off-center. No signage, just a brown door and a light that flickered above it like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or give up. The girl held the door open for us. "Downstairs," she said, motioning to the basement steps. That should have been red flag number 2, because the moment we stepped down into that basement, everything changed. The air hit me first, too warm, too still, like no one had opened a window in weeks. That heavy kind of heat that sticks to your skin and smells faintly like mildew, burnt coffee, and forgotten things. There were folding chairs set up in rows, maybe 30 or so, all facing a table at the front. On the table were a few coffee dispensers, the kind you see at PTA meetings, and 24 donuts stacked on paper plates. Glazed, frosted, sprinkles. They looked off. The glaze had started to crack and harden like they'd been left out too long under bad lighting. But that wasn't what really bothered me. No one was eating. We weren't the only ones there. About 10 other people sat scattered across the room, all looking like they'd been caught in the middle of something else. Like they didn't plan on being here either. And standing at the front, hands clasped like he was giving a sermon, was a man in a beige button-up and khakis. The pastor, I guess. He smiled too. Same kind of smile. Too wide, too fixed. Like he was trying to convince himself he meant it. "Welcome," he said. "We're so glad you came." No one clapped. No one even moved. He started talking about community, about being present, about how most people go through life without seeing what's right in front of them. At first, it sounded like a generic church pitch, but then he started talking about extraction, about removing the distractions of modern life so we could realign with intention. I nudged Marcus. He leaned in. "We're leaving," he whispered. Jen was already half standing. I turned back toward the table and noticed the same 3 people who invited us in were still standing by the door, watching, smiling, the donuts still untouched. We stood up as quietly as we could, trying not to draw attention. "Everything okay?" the girl asked, stepping forward. Marcus forced a smile. Yeah. Just realized we're behind schedule. Gotta keep driving." Her smile didn't move. "You sure? We haven't even done introductions yet." We'll be quick, Jen said. Just need to use the restroom before we go. The girl pointed down a dark hallway. Second door on the left. I didn't need to go, but I followed Jen anyway. The hallway had no lights, just a dim glow coming from the bathroom door, like someone had left the light on just enough to cast shadows where faces could hide. Jen slipped inside. I stood outside, trying not to breathe too loud. That's when I heard the footsteps, not behind me, in front, down the hallway, coming toward us. But the hallway was empty. Or at least, it looked empty. Jen opened the door, and I jumped. We practically ran back into the main room. The pastor was still talking, like nothing was wrong. But now all the chairs were full, and every single person was staring at us. No more casual glances, no more awkward silence, just blank faces, watching, unblinking. We didn't say anything. We just turned and walked, fast, back up the stairs, back out into the light. The girl followed us to the door. "You're making a mistake," she said. Marcus held the car keys like a weapon. Not the first time. We got in the car and peeled off, tires kicking up dust behind us. And we thought that was it. We thought we got out. But at the gas station, 3 miles down the road, I went to use the bathroom while Marcus pumped gas. The door was locked. I waited. And when it finally opened, he stepped out. One of them. The guy with the hollow smile. He didn't look surprised, didn't say anything. Just nodded, like he was expecting me, like he already knew we'd stop here. We didn't say a word. I walked right past him, didn't even shut the door behind me. I barely peed. My hands were shaking so bad, I forgot to zip my pants before running back to the car. We didn't stop again until we hit Pennsylvania. We drove through the night in silence, every car behind us feeling like a tale. Every diner too quiet, every parking lot too open. None of us talk about Jamestown anymore. None of us even looked up if it was real. Because if we did, and it didn't exist, I don't know what would be worse. This isn't my story, but it happened to someone I trust. And sometimes I think that's worse. Because when something terrifying happens to you, at least you're in it. You can rationalize, fight back, piece it together after. When it happens to someone else, someone real, someone you know, it just lives in the back of your brain. Forever. Thailand. Graduation trip. 20 kids, all of them fresh out of high school, hopped up on cheap beer and the kind of false invincibility that comes with being young and overseas for the first time. You know the type of trip. Sunburns, bad tattoos, worse decisions. This story takes place on day 5. They were staying in a hostel in Chiang Mai. 5 bunk beds to a room, backpacks everywhere, fans spinning so slow it was practically useless. The kind of setup that's more vibe than safety. That night, they went out to a bar called Mooncat, or Skyrider, or something equally neon and forgettable. Not a classy place. Plastic cups, sticky floors, techno remixes of songs you already hate. The kind of bar where tourists and locals mix but never really see each other. My friend, we'll call him Evan, remembers the exact moment he saw Liam stand up to go to the bathroom. "Hold my beer," Liam said, pushing back his chair. Somebody threw a straw wrapper at him. Someone else shouted, "Don't fall in!" Everyone laughed. It was 1:10 a.m. Liam weaved through the crowd. And that was it. He never came back. At first, no one thought anything of it. It's a bar. It's loud. People wander. Maybe he met someone. Maybe he got sick. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 30. Someone went to check the bathroom. Empty. They checked outside. Nothing. His beer was still at the table. His phone was in his pocket and no one was answering. Straight to voicemail. That's when the tone changed, when the jokes stopped. They asked the bartender. She shrugged, didn't remember him. They asked the bouncer. He said he saw a lot of people that night. Eventually, someone convinced the owner to pull the security footage. And yeah, Liam's on it. Clear as day. Walking toward the back hallway near the bathrooms. But then, nothing. He steps into the one blind spot. No exit shot. No return. Like the frame swallowed him. That was 5 years ago. There was a search, of course. Local police. Embassy involvement. Flyers. Social posts. But no body, no bag, no trace. It's like he got up to pee, and the world just deleted him. The group flew home shattered. His parents stayed for weeks. But eventually, life moved on, except for Evan and me. Because here's the part that still haunts me. About a year ago, Evan told me something. Something he'd only learned after a private investigator pulled Liam's phone records. The phone wasn't lost. It was manually turned off. At 1:17 a.m. 7 minutes after he stood up from the table. 7 minutes after everyone was still laughing. Right around the time he'd be standing alone in that dark hallway. You don't just turn off someone's phone during a disappearance. It's not instinct. It's not panic. It's procedure. That's what the investigator told Evan. And that one word stuck with both of us. Procedure. Someone didn't panic and smash it. They didn't throw it in a river or wipe it. They turned it off. Clean. Deliberate. Which means whoever did it knew what they were doing. The case went cold after that. There was no signal. No pings. And by then, the Thai police had already written it off as one of three things. A drunk foreigner who wandered off and got lost. A robbery gone wrong. Someone who didn't want to be found. But Evan knew Liam. We both did. He was the kind of guy who wouldn't ghost someone, let alone his entire life. He loved his mom too much. Was obsessed with that one shitty indie band from Oregon. Wanted to be a teacher, for God's sake. He had a plan, and he was careful. Always the one telling people to pace themselves, to keep track of their passports, to take a picture of the hostel address, just in case. So no, he didn't just wander off, and he sure as hell didn't plan it. And the longer Evan talked, the more I realized this wasn't just guilt or trauma talking. It was truth. He said one night, a couple months after they got back, he started checking every forum, thread, and post about missing travelers in Southeast Asia, and patterns started to show up, not in the mainstream reports, but the weird ones, the ones people barely pay attention to. There were other cases, not a ton, but enough. Always young, always foreign, always around bars or hostels in smaller towns, Chiang Mai, Ayutthaya, Koh Lanta, and always the same kind of story. They went to the bathroom and never came back. Same blind spots in footage, same useless police reports. One girl in a Reddit post said she saw a man get followed out of a karaoke bar by two guys in leather jackets who looked like staff, but when she asked the bartender, they said no one fitting that description worked there. Another post talked about a backpacker who vanished near the Laos border. His phone was off by the time anyone noticed. They found his hat near a back alley, but that was it. It's like there's this invisible network nobody talks about. Not cartels, not organ rings, just something worse. Something efficient, professional, quiet. Evan got obsessed, to the point where he started keeping a binder. Notes, maps, screen grabs. And at the back of the binder, he kept a list of names. Not just the missing people, but the ones he thought might be connected. Bar staff, bouncers, hostel owners. A guy who showed up in two different tourist photos 400 miles apart, 6 days apart, standing in the background. Same jacket, same smirk. Evan showed me that picture once. Said he was planning a return trip to retrace Liam's steps, try to get answers. I told him not to, begged him not to. That was 2 years ago, and the last time I heard from Evan, his socials went dead. No posts, no stories, no check-ins. His mom said he was traveling and not taking calls. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But last month, something happened. I got a package, no return address. Inside was a USB stick and a burner phone, dead battery. I charged it. One video. It was shaky, filmed from under what looked like a plastic table in a dim room, maybe a basement. You can hear people talking, footsteps, low voices in another language. And then the camera shifts just enough to catch a flash of movement. A figure, tall, male, handcuffed to a chair, head down. But the jacket, it's Evan's, that ugly brown windbreaker he always wore. The one Liam gave him for graduation. I haven't told anyone. Not his mom, not the police. Because I know what they'll say. They'll say it's fake. They'll They'll say I'm grieving. They'll say I'm paranoid. But I know what I saw. You don't really understand what silence is until you're out there. Like, real silence. Not the kind where the air hums or there's a car 2 streets over. I'm talking the kind of silence that has weight, where your own breathing feels too loud. And if you stop moving, you hear your heartbeat. That's the kind of quiet the South Texas desert gives you after sundown. It was me, Luis, Brandon, and Ray. 4 dumb 18-year-olds fresh out of high school, drunk on freedom and thinking we knew everything. We loaded up Ray's beat-up Tacoma with cheap beer, folding chairs, and a half-broken tent, and drove 3 hours past anything with a street light. We weren't even at a real campsite, just a patch of brush we found through a friend of a friend. The kind of place where no one could find you, and no one would hear you scream. That should have been the first red flag. But when you're young, the idea of being unreachable feels more like freedom than risk. Like, yeah, no cell service. We're wild. So we set up camp, built a little fire pit, started passing the bottle around like we were men now. It was warm, quiet, stars were insane. We told the same recycled stories, talked about girls, talked about where we'd be in 10 years. Then the fire crackled, and we realized we weren't alone. It was subtle at first, just shadows moving a little weird. I thought it was the heat from the fire warping my vision. But then I saw boots, crunching the gravel just beyond the tree line. Slow, deliberate, and then, all at once, 3 men stepped into the firelight. No noise, no footsteps we could track. It was like they'd materialized. All 3 of them had that look. Sun-worn skin, dark clothes, faces like stone. No one said anything at first. We just stared at each other. Then the one in front, the tallest, he said, "You come with us." That's it. Not a question. Not even loud. Just flat, like it was already decided. Luis laughed. God, I wish he hadn't, and said, "Y'all out here filming a horror movie or something?" The man didn't move, didn't smile, didn't blink. And that's when we saw it. The machete. It was just there, glinting in the firelight like it was part of him. The second guy had a small hatchet. Third guy? His hands were empty, but something about the way he stood, too still, too comfortable in the dark, made me more scared of him than the rest. Brandon whispered, "We need to go. Now." And the guy with the machete took a single step forward. I can still hear that gravel crunch. Ray moved first. He stood up, too fast, and his chair toppled over. That tiny sound, that stupid folding chair hitting the ground, it changed everything. Because suddenly, the machete guy twitched, like a reflex, and I saw his fingers tighten. I don't even remember moving. I just remember running. Ray's truck was maybe 40 feet away, but it felt like a mile. We hit the doors hard, practically fell into the cab. Brandon was screaming, like full panic scream. Ray was trying to get the key in the ignition, and his hands were shaking so bad he kept missing. And that's when we heard it. That same voice, right outside the window. "You don't want to run. Trust me." I looked up. He was right there. Face blank, eyes dull, machete resting on his shoulder. That's when Ray reached under the driver's seat and pulled it out. The shotgun. Single barrel. Old. But real. I'd completely forgotten he brought it. Ray rolled down the window just enough, lifted the barrel, and pointed it right at the guy's face. Didn't say a word. Just stared at him. The guy didn't flinch, didn't show fear. Just studied us like he was thinking it over. Then he stepped back. Slow. 1 pace, 2. Back into the dark. We drove. Didn't pack. Didn't grab the tent. Left the cooler, the chairs, everything. Ray hit 80 within seconds, headlights bouncing off the dirt road like we were off-roading into oblivion. We didn't stop until the sun came up. Didn't speak until we hit a real gas station outside of San Antonio. And even then, all anyone could say was, "What the hell was that?" We didn't talk about it for weeks. Not because we forgot, because none of us knew what the hell we'd actually seen. You don't expect to run into that kind of evil in the middle of nowhere. You expect rattlesnakes or maybe a stray coyote, not 3 men with weapons stepping into the firelight like they'd been there the whole time. And yeah, sure, we joked about it later, tried to laugh it off, tried to reframe it like some backwoods drug thing. Maybe they had a grow operation out there, Ray said once. Maybe we just got too close to something we shouldn't have. But that wasn't it. This didn't feel like we interrupted them. It felt like they were waiting for kids too stupid to realize that some parts of the map are empty on purpose, waiting for the fire to get bright enough to draw us in, and the booze to make us slow to react. I kept going back to that one line. You come with us. Not, what are you doing out here? Not, this is private land. Not even a threat. Just a demand. Like we were already theirs. Like it was supposed to go a certain way. Like they were following some script. And I think about that every time I try to sleep. Because what if we hadn't run? What if the chair hadn't tipped? What if Ray didn't have the shotgun? What would they have done with us? A month later, Brandon called me at like 2 a.m. Said he hadn't been able to sleep for days. Said he kept hearing footsteps outside his window. Gravel crunching like boots. Only thing is, he lived in an apartment. No gravel. Just concrete. He said it got worse after he tried to look them up. He'd gone full deep dive, trying to ID them, Googling old missing persons cases in the area, scrolling forums about backcountry crimes in Texas. Found nothing, except one post on a survival blog. Buried. Old. No comments. No replies. It was just one sentence. South of 90, west of Uvalde. Don't camp there. Followed by coordinates. And it matched exactly where we'd set up our fire that night. That's when he stopped searching. Luis moved out of state not long after. Said it was for work, but I think he just needed to put distance between himself and that night. He refused to say a word about it after that. Once, at a party, someone brought up creepy camping stories, and Luis just got up and left. Didn't even say goodbye. Ray changed the most. He started carrying that shotgun with him everywhere. Kept it in the truck, in his apartment. Even brought it into the bathroom when we stayed at a hotel during a group trip a year later. He said it made him feel safer, but he also started noticing things. He'd call me at random times, say he saw the guy from the desert, not like somebody who looked like him. He meant him. Exact same face, same eyes, same dull stare. Said he saw him walking into a Walmart in El Paso, once at a gas station in Oklahoma, another time sitting in a parked car outside his gym, just long enough to be noticed, then gone. I asked him if he was sure. He said, "No one forgets that face." And now, whenever I go on road trips, I don't stop in small towns. I don't camp where there's no signal. And I don't sit too close to the fire. Because here's the part that doesn't make sense. The part that keeps me up. They didn't chase us. Didn't run after us. Didn't yell. They just watched. And then, stepped back into the dark. Like it wasn't our turn yet. Like they knew we'd tell the story. And maybe that's what they wanted. Not blood. Not bodies. Fear. To plant it. Spread it. Let it grow in the heads of kids who think the desert is just a place. Just terrain. Just dust. But there are people out there who use that dust as cover. Who wait in the silence. Who walk barefoot through the dark because they're not worried about stepping on something sharp. They are the sharp thing. And if you're reading this thinking, I'd never let that happen to me. Good. That's what we thought too. We should have known something was wrong when the bus drivers refused to make eye contact. My mother, my sister, and I were on our way back to my uncle's village in the Balkans after years of living in Germany. The trip was supposed to be nostalgic, a chance to show my sister where we came from, to eat my grandmother's cooking again, to breathe air that didn't smell like exhaust and wet pavement. The bus ride was long, over 30 hours, but we didn't mind. We had snacks, music, the kind of dumb jokes that only make sense when you're too tired to care. Then, around 11 p.m., the bus shuddered to a stop. No streetlights, no buildings, just a stretch of empty road swallowed by pine trees and darkness. One of the drivers stood, his face shadowed under the dim cabin light. "Flat tire," he announced. "We need to wait for help." My mother frowned. "Out here?" He shrugged. "Taxi's coming." That's when the other women started crying. There were 3 of them. Older, local. The kind of women who carried themselves like they'd seen enough of the world to know when something wasn't right. One clutched her phone, whispering frantically to someone on the other end. Another kept crossing herself, over and over like she was preparing for the worst. My mother didn't understand. She just sighed, gathering our bags. "Come on," she said. "Your uncle will meet us at the station. These taxis will get us there faster." I wish I'd stopped her. The taxis were unmarked, their drivers leaning against the hoods, smoking. No company logos, no IDs. Just 3 men in leather jackets watching us. One of them smiled at my sister. "You ride with me." My mother, ever trusting, nodded. She handed him our suitcases. That's when the woman on the phone screamed. Not a shout, a raw animal sound. She lunged for her friend, dragging her back from the open taxi door. "Don't get in!" she hissed in Serbian, loud enough for us to hear. "They're lying!" The drivers stiffened. One of them took a step toward her. Then, headlights. A beat-up Lada skidded to a stop behind the taxis, and a man spilled out, thick-necked, furious, with 2 younger guys behind him. The woman on the phone sobbed in relief. "My husband!" The taxi drivers froze. For a second, nobody moved. Then, like ghosts, the men in leather jackets melted back into their cars. Our suitcases hit the dirt as they peeled away, tires spitting gravel. The husband didn't say a word. He just grabbed his wife, shoved her into the Lada, and glared at the bus drivers. "Go!" he barked at us. "Now!" We ran. Later, we found out the truth. For months, women had been vanishing along that route. Never tourists, just locals, the kind of people nobody would question if they didn't come home. The police called it trafficking. The villagers called it something darker. And the bus drivers? They were never seen again. I should have just held it. It was 3 a.m. and I was driving through the backwoods of Maine, snow coming down so thick it looked like static on an old TV. I was making my usual run between my place in Nova Scotia and my apartment in New York, a trip I'd done a dozen times before. But this stretch always felt different. No streetlights, no exits, just mile after mile of black pines hunched under the weight of the storm. My gas gauge was flirting with empty. I'd been telling myself to stop for the last 50 miles. But something kept my foot on the pedal. Maybe it was the way the snow made the road disappear behind me, like the world was closing up as I passed through. Maybe it was the silence. No radio, no other cars, just the hum of the engine and the occasional groan of ice settling on the roof. Finally, I saw a glow up ahead. A gas station. It wasn't a chain. Just some independent place with flickering fluorescence and a hand-painted sign that read, "Last stop, 50 miles. The pumps were old, the kind with analog numbers that clicked as they rolled. I pulled in, half expecting the place to be abandoned, but the door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and stale cigarettes. The clerk barely glanced up from his magazine. I filled the tank, grabbed a coffee that tasted like motor oil, and stepped outside to smoke. That's when I noticed the car. An old Buick parked at the far end of the lot. 3 men inside. They weren't getting gas. They weren't going inside. They were just sitting there, watching me. I took a drag, trying to seem casual, but my hands were shaking. The snow muffled everything. My footsteps, the distant whine of the highway, even the click of my lighter. It was too quiet. I stubbed out the cigarette and got back in my car. 2 miles down the road, the headlights appeared. At first, I told myself it was just another night driver. But then, they sped up, riding my bumper so close I could see the silhouette of the guy in the passenger seat, his face pale under the dashboard lights. I eased off the gas, hoping they'd pass. They didn't. Then, thump. The impact was gentle, almost polite. Just a nudge from behind. A "hey, pull over" kind of tap. I didn't. The Buick rammed me again, harder this time. My coffee spilled, scalding my thigh. I grabbed my phone. No signal, of course. The third hit sent me fishtailing. I wrenched the wheel, fighting for control as the car skidded toward the ditch. That's when I saw the shotgun under the back seat. I didn't think. I just moved. The second I stopped, I was out of the car, the barrel leveled at the Buick's windshield. The three men froze halfway out of their doors, hands in their jackets, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Then they scrambled back inside and peeled off, tires spinning on the ice. The cops never found them. The plate I gave them didn't exist. But I know what I saw. And I know what would have happened if I hadn't been armed that night. Now, I don't stop for gas after dark. Not ever. I didn't go to Peru expecting terror. I went for healing. The retreat was nestled so deep in the Amazon that getting there felt like stepping into another world. The nearest town, Tarapoto, was a hazy dot on the map, close enough to reach in a few hours, but far enough that the jungle swallowed all traces of civilization the moment you left its borders. There were two ways to get to the retreat: a rickety group bus that smelled like sweat and diesel, or a motorbike taxi. Most travelers opted for the bus. Safety in numbers, right? But after the ceremony ended, I had a few extra days to kill before flying back to the States. My bunkmate, Lena, a soft-spoken Danish girl with a nose ring and a nervous laugh, decided to stay in Tarapoto for her early flight. That left me alone for the ride back. I should have waited. The motorbike taxi was nothing more than a rusted Honda with a cracked seat and a driver who spoke broken English. His name was Rico, or at least that's what he told me. He had a gold tooth and a habit of spitting into the underbrush every few minutes. The road was a single dirt path, barely wide enough for two bikes to pass. On either side, the jungle loomed, thick, green, and humming with unseen things. The air smelled like wet earth and something else, something sour and metallic. About halfway back, Rico slowed to a stop. At first, I thought it was an animal, a snake, maybe, or a fallen branch. Then I saw the man. He stepped out of the trees like he'd been waiting for us. He was tall, wiry, dressed in faded camo pants and a stained white tank top. The AR-15 slung over his shoulder wasn't for show. Rico didn't react. No surprise, no tension, just a lazy kick of the stand to balance the bike. The man leaned down, his breath hot and sour. "A donde vas?" My Spanish was shit, but I understood enough. "Where are you going?" I stammered out the name of the retreat. He stared at me, unblinking, then turned to Rico and muttered something too fast for me to catch. Rico nodded, pulled out a crumpled pack of cigarettes, and lit one, like this was just another Tuesday. The man with the rifle tapped my knee. "Dinero." It wasn't a request. Rico turned to me, his face blank. "You pay." My hands shook as I dug into my backpack. The man watched, his fingers drumming against the rifle's stock. I pulled out a wad of souls, 10 to be exact, less than $8. The man snatched it, counted it, then smirked. He said something to Rico, who just nodded again. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, the man melted back into the trees. Rico kicked the bike back to life. We drove. I thought it was over. Then, a few miles later, Rico stopped again. My stomach dropped. Was this a setup? Had he called ahead? "Ven," he said, jerking his chin toward the trees. "Come." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse. But what choice did I have? If I ran, where would I go? The jungle didn't care about lost tourists. I followed him to the edge of the road. The ground fell away into a sheer cliff. Below us, two rivers collided. One small and furious, the other vast and slow. The smaller river smashed into the Amazon like a fist, white foam exploding where they met. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Rico didn't speak. We just stood there, watching the water churn. For a second, the fear faded. Then he turned and walked back to the bike. The rest of the ride was silent. When we finally reached the retreat, I stumbled off the bike, my legs weak. Rico just nodded and drove away, like none of it had happened. I never told the retreat staff. What would I say? That I'd been shaken down by a man with a rifle? That my driver had taken me to a cliff like he was showing me a secret? I still don't know if Rico was in on it. I don't know if that man was a guerrilla, a trafficker, or just some guy extorting tourists.